Her toxic family bled her dry. I found out she cheated for months. Her final note to me, and it changed everything. My name is James, and I'm a 32-year-old software engineer living in Seattle, Washington. For the past 3 years, I've been engaged to Emily, a brilliant woman who clawed her way out of a rough past to build a solid career as a marketing manager. We met at a tech conference in Bellevue, hit it off over coffee, and soon moved into her cozy apartment in Capitol Hill. I thought we were building a life together, dreaming of a future with kids and a house in the suburbs, but her family from Portland, Oregon, turned our dreams into a nightmare. Emily's childhood was brutal. Her parents, Linda and Greg, were textbook narcissists, always putting her down while praising her 2 older brothers, Mike and Derek. They scapegoated her for every family problem, blaming her for their financial struggles or their bad moods. At 18, they kicked her out of their rundown house in Portland's outskirts, leaving her to fend for herself. Emily was a fighter, though. She earned a scholarship to the University of Washington, graduated top of her class, and landed a high-paying job at a tech firm in downtown Seattle. I admired her strength, her fire, but that fire dimmed when her family slithered back into her life. As soon as Emily started earning a good salary, Linda, Greg, and her brothers showed up, acting like they'd never hurt her. They'd call her constantly, demanding loans. They never repaid $500 here, $1,000 there. Emily couldn't say no. She'd freeze, her hands trembling, as if that scared little girl from Portland was still inside her, desperate for their approval. I'd watch her eyes well up after their calls, her voice shaking as she'd say, "They're my family, James. I have to help them." It broke my heart, but it also started to wear me down. Their visits were the worst. They'd show up unannounced at our apartment, barging in like they owned the place. Linda would criticize everything: the decor, the food, even Emily's job. Greg would raid our fridge, leaving empty beer cans and dirty plates scattered around. Mike and Derek would sprawl on our couch, blasting the TV, tossing chip bags on the floor. I'd come home from work to find our home trashed, Emily shrinking in a corner, silent. I tried talking to her, begging her to set boundaries, but she'd just whisper, "I can't, James. They're all I have." I wanted to scream that I was her family now, that we were supposed to be enough. I loved Emily, but the chaos was suffocating. Every time her family left, I'd spend hours cleaning up their mess, my frustration boiling. I'd lie awake at night, listening to Emily cry herself to sleep, wondering how long I could keep this up. I started to feel like a stranger in my own home, like I was fighting a losing battle against her past. Something had to give, and I knew it was only a matter of time before I'd have to make a choice: stay and drown in this dysfunction, or save myself. I'll never forget the first time Emily's family showed up unannounced at our Capitol Hill apartment. It was a rainy Saturday in Seattle, and I'd just gotten back from a long week at my tech job in Bellevue. I was looking forward to a quiet night with Emily, maybe ordering takeout from our favorite Thai place on Pine Street. But as I opened the door, I heard laughter, loud, grating laughter that didn't belong to Emily. My stomach sank. There they were, Linda, Greg, Mike, and Derek, sprawled across our living room like they'd lived there for years. The coffee table was littered with empty soda cans, chip crumbs, and a half-eaten pizza I hadn't bought. Linda was lounging on our couch, her feet propped up on my vintage ottoman, barking orders at Emily to fetch more drinks. Greg was in the kitchen, rummaging through our fridge, muttering about how we never have anything good. Mike and Derek were glued to their phones, tossing insults at each other and leaving muddy footprints on our rug. Emily stood in the corner, her shoulders hunched, eyes darting nervously. I caught her gaze, but she looked away, her hands twisting together. "They just showed up," she whispered, like that explained everything. I bit my tongue, but inside, I was fuming. This wasn't a one-time thing. It happened every few weeks. They'd drive up from Portland without warning, claiming they just wanted to see Emily, but it was always the same. Linda would criticize our apartment, saying it was too small for someone with Emily's salary. Greg would eat everything in sight, leaving dirty dishes piled in the sink. Once, he took a $50 steak I'd bought for a special dinner and grilled it for himself without asking. Mike and Derek were no better, blasting music, leaving trash everywhere, and treating our home like a frat house. Every visit ended with them asking Emily for money: $200 for car repairs, $800 for medical bills. She'd hand it over, her face pale, her voice barely audible as she said, "It's fine, James. They need it." I tried to be patient. I loved Emily, and I knew her family had a hold on her from years of emotional abuse, but their disrespect was relentless. One night, Linda had the nerve to tell me I was lucky to be with someone like Emily, implying I was beneath her because I wasn't family. Greg laughed, clapping me on the shoulder like it was a joke, but his eyes were cold. I felt like an outsider in my own home, my blood boiling as I scrubbed their messes off our counters. Emily would apologize after they left, tears streaming down her face, but she'd never stand up to them. "I just want them to love me," she'd sob, and I'd hold her, my heart breaking, but my patience wearing thin. I tried talking to her, gently at first. "Emily, we can't keep living like this. They're using you. They don't care about you." She'd nod, but the next time they called, she'd let them in again. I suggested therapy, hoping she'd see how toxic they were, but she brushed it off, saying she could handle it. I started dreading weekends, knowing they'd show up, uninvited, to wreck our peace. My resentment grew, a heavy weight in my chest. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was the problem for not being able to fix this. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the mess or the money, it was about Emily's refusal to choose us over them. I felt trapped, watching the woman I loved shrink under their control, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could take it. I couldn't take it anymore. The constant invasions by Emily's family, the way they disrespected our home in Seattle, and the way she let them walk all over her, it was suffocating. One evening, after another chaotic visit from Linda, Greg and her brothers left our Capitol Hill apartment looking like a tornado hit it. I hit my breaking point. I found Emily in our bedroom, curled up on the bed, her eyes red from crying. I sat down, my heart pounding, knowing this conversation might change everything. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady but heavy. She looked up, her face pale, and nodded. I took a deep breath. "This can't go on. Your family's destroying us. They show up, trash our home, take your money, and treat you like garbage. I can't marry you if this is our future." Her eyes widened, but I kept going. "I'm not saying cut them off completely, but we need boundaries. No more unannounced visits, no more loans, and we need couples therapy to figure this out before we even think about a wedding." I laid it all out, how their behavior made me feel like a stranger in our home, how I couldn't imagine raising kids in this chaos. I told her I loved her, but I needed her to choose us, not them. Emily's face hardened. She stood up, her hands clenched. "You don't get it, James. They're my family. I can't just abandon them." Her voice cracked, but her eyes burned with anger. I tried to stay calm. "They're not your family if they hurt you like this. They're users, Emily. I've watched you cry yourself to sleep too many times." She shook her head, her voice rising. "You're trying to control me. You don't understand how hard it is to let them go." I snapped back. "I'm not controlling you. I'm trying to save us. But if you can't set limits, I'm done." The words hung in the air, heavy and final. She froze, then pointed to the door. "If you can't handle my family, then leave. This is my house." My chest tightened, but I saw the truth in her eyes. She wasn't ready to change. I grabbed a bag, threw in some clothes, and walked out. The Seattle rain hit my face as I headed to my car, my heart a mess of anger and heartbreak. I checked into a hotel downtown, near Pike Place, and collapsed onto the bed, the silence both a relief and a punch to the gut. For the first time in months, I didn't have to clean up after her family or tiptoe around her pain. But I missed her, the Emily I fell in love with, not the one trapped by her past. The next few days were a blur. I moved my stuff into a storage unit in Fremont, planning to stay with my parents in Tacoma soon. I threw myself into work, catching up on projects I'd neglected, and spent evenings wandering the city, grabbing coffee at a shop on First Avenue or watching the ferries glide across Puget Sound. It felt good to breathe, to have space to think, but Emily's texts kept coming, first angry, accusing me of abandoning her, then desperate, begging me to come back. I muted her number, my resentment growing. I'd spent years shielding her from her family's abuse, only to be kicked out for asking her to stand up for herself. One Saturday, I knew her family would be at her place. They always came on weekends, expecting her to play host while they tore her down. My phone buzzed all day, her name flashing on the screen. I ignored it, my anger simmering. I went to a bar in Belltown, sipping a beer and playing pool, trying to drown out the guilt. By night, I had over a dozen missed calls and texts from Emily, her voicemails frantic. "James, please, I need you. They're here and it's bad. Please come." I sat there, staring at my phone, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to run to her, but another part, the part that was done being her shield, kept me rooted. Finally, I drove to her apartment, my hands gripping the wheel. When I walked in, Emily was a wreck, sobbing on the couch, her face buried in her hands. She lunged at me, hugging me so tight I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry, James," she choked out. "They were awful. They demanded money, called me worthless. I tried to stand up to them, but I couldn't." I held her, my anger softening, but my resolve firm. She told me her friends had refused to help, fed up with her family's drama. It was starting to click for her. Her family wasn't just difficult, they were toxic. But I couldn't stay. "Emily, I love you, but this isn't enough. You need to make real changes, or we're done." She nodded, tears streaming, but I walked out, knowing I couldn't keep saving her. After I left Emily's apartment that night, the Seattle skyline blurred through my car window as I drove back to my hotel near Pike Place. My heart was heavy, torn between love for her and the exhaustion of fighting her family's chaos. I wanted to believe she'd finally see the truth, but I wasn't holding my breath. For days, I kept my distance, my phone on silent, trying to focus on work and the quiet of my temporary life. But Emily's voicemails piled up, each one more desperate. "James, I get it now," she said in one, her voice shaky. "They're tearing me apart. I need help." I listened, my chest tight, but I didn't reply. I'd heard her promises before. A week later, I got a call from our mutual friend, Sarah, who lived in Queen Anne. She sounded frantic. "James, something happened. Emily kicked her family out last night." I sat up, my pulse racing. Sarah explained that Linda, Greg, and her brothers had shown up again, demanding $2,000 for some vague emergency. Emily, for the first time, said no. They unleashed a torrent of insults, called her selfish, a failure, said she'd never be anything without them. Emily snapped, screaming at them to leave, her voice raw with years of pent-up pain. They left, but not before smashing a lamp and leaving her kitchen a wreck. Sarah found found her curled up on the floor, sobbing, her hands trembling as she clutched a photo of us from happier times. I drove over, my mind racing. When I walked into her apartment, Emily looked broken, her eyes hollow. She threw her arms around me, her sobs muffled against my chest. "I'm so sorry, James," she whispered. "You were right. They're poison. I thought they'd love me if I gave them everything, but they just take." I held her, my anger fading, replaced by pity. She told me how she'd called her friends for support, but most had backed away, tired of her family's drama. Her job was slipping too. Her boss at the tech firm had warned her about missed deadlines, her focus shattered by the constant stress. I wanted to stay, to fix her, but I couldn't. "Emily, I'm glad you're seeing it, but this is bigger than us. You need to set real boundaries, new therapist. No contact with them, maybe even move. I can't come back until you do." Her face crumpled, but she nodded. "I'll try," she said, her voice small. I left, my heart aching, knowing she might not follow through. I checked back into my hotel, the city's hum a distant comfort as I wrestled with guilt and relief. Days turned into weeks. Sarah kept me updated. Emily was spiraling. She'd stopped going to work regularly, her apartment a mess of unwashed dishes and scattered clothes. Her friends tried to help, inviting her out to coffee shops in Fremont or walks along Alki Beach, but she'd cancel, too drained to leave the house. Her family kept calling, leaving voicemails that swung between guilt-tripping and outright cruelty. Emily blocked their numbers, but the damage was done. She was alone, her support system fraying. Sarah said Emily mentioned me constantly, saying she'd lost the one person who truly cared. It stung, but I couldn't go back, not after everything. One night, Sarah called again, her voice heavy. "Emily's in trouble, James. She's not eating, barely sleeping. Her boss put her on leave, told her to get help, or she's out." I stared out my hotel window at the Space Needle, my throat tight. Emily was falling apart, and part of me felt responsible. Had I pushed too hard? Should I have stayed? But I knew the truth. She had to face this herself. I told Sarah I'd check in soon, but I needed space. Deep down, I feared Emily was slipping into a darkness I couldn't pull her out of, and it terrified me. The weeks after Emily's breakdown were a blur. I stayed in my hotel near Pike Place, throwing myself into work to keep my mind off her. Seattle's gray skies matched my mood, part relief, part guilt. I wanted Emily to heal, to break free from her toxic family, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd abandoned her. Sarah's updates grew sparse, mostly texts saying Emily was trying but struggling. Then, one rainy evening, my phone buzzed with a call from Sarah that turned my world upside down. "James, you need to know something," she said, her voice tight. "Emily's been lying to all of us." I sat on the edge of my hotel bed, my heart pounding. Sarah explained that she'd noticed Emily acting strange around her boyfriend, Mark, during a group hangout at a bar in Ballard. Emily was overly touchy, laughing too hard at his jokes, lingering too close. Sarah brushed it off at first, but suspicion gnawed at her. One night, while Mark was asleep, she checked his phone. What she found gutted her. Intimate texts between Mark and Emily, going back 8 months back when Emily and I were still together, planning our wedding. My stomach churned. I gripped the phone, my voice barely steady. "You're saying she cheated on me?" Sarah's voice broke. "Yeah, James. I'm so sorry. It wasn't just a fling. They were planning to leave us both, but Mark wouldn't commit to her." She told me how Emily had confided in her family about Mark, how they'd approved of him over me, egging her on. The night I left her apartment, after our big fight, she'd invited him over, thinking he'd be her new start. But Mark refused to leave Sarah, hating Emily's family as much as I did. He'd kept it secret for months, using Emily while stringing Sarah along. I felt like I'd been punched. All those nights I'd held Emily, wiped her tears, cleaned up after her family. I'd been a fool. My anger boiled, but beneath it was a deep, aching hurt. Had any of it been real? Sarah wasn't done. When she confronted Mark, he threw another friend, Joseph, under the bus, claiming Joseph knew about the affair and covered for him. The fallout was explosive. Joseph's girlfriend dumped him, kicking him out of their Fremont apartment. The friend group, 9 of us who'd been tight for years, shattered. Sarah and Joseph were the only ones still speaking, while Emily became the pariah, blamed for tearing everyone apart. I drove to a quiet spot by Lake Union, staring at the water as I processed it all. Emily's betrayal stung, but her desperation made sense now. She'd clung to Mark, to her family's approval, because she couldn't face herself. Sarah said Emily tried to explain, mumbling about how Mark was her support when I pushed her away, but no one bought it. Her friends cut her off, unwilling to deal with her chaos anymore. Even Mark ghosted her, leaving her completely alone. Sarah heard Emily had lost her job for good. Her boss at the tech firm fired her after she stopped showing up, too broken to function. I wanted to hate her, but all I felt was a hollow sadness. Emily wasn't the woman I'd loved anymore. She'd let her family's poison and her own desperation destroy everything: her friends, her career, us. Sarah told me Emily's family was back, camping out at her apartment, taking what little she had left. I sat by the lake, the rain pattering on my windshield, wondering how it had come to this. I'd fought for her, but she'd chosen a path I couldn't follow. As the city lights flickered, I knew I had to let go, but a nagging fear told me this wasn't the end of her story or mine. The days after Sarah's call about Emily's betrayal felt like a fog. I was back in Tacoma, staying with my parents, trying to piece together a new life. Seattle's chaos. Emily Emily, her family, the shattered friend group felt like a bad dream, but it lingered, heavy in my chest. I threw myself into routine, morning runs along Ruston Way, late nights coding at a coffee shop in Proctor, but Emily's shadow followed me. Sarah's occasional texts painted a grim picture. Emily was unraveling, alone in her Capitol Hill apartment, her family draining what little she had left. I wanted to move on, but part of me still ached for the woman I'd once planned a future with. Then, one chilly evening, my phone rang. It was Sarah, her voice trembling. "James, it's Emily. She's gone." My heart stopped. Sarah explained through tears. 2 nights ago, Emily had taken her own life. Her family found her in her apartment, surrounded by notes, one for her friends, one for me. I sat on my parents' porch, the Puget Sound breeze cold against my face, trying to process it. Sarah said Emily's family showed no grief, just indifference, already arguing over her belongings. A neighbor had called Sarah when paramedics arrived, and the scene was chaos. Linda and Greg yelling, Mike and Derek looting her fridge. I felt sick, my mind spinning. How had it come to this? Sarah told me Emily's decline had been rapid. After losing her job and friends, she'd let her family back in, unable to break free. They'd camped out in her apartment, taking money, clothes, even her TV. Emily's mental health crumbled. She'd stopped eating, barely slept, her once vibrant spirit crushed. Sarah and a few others had tried to help, pushing her toward therapy, even staging an intervention, but Emily was too far gone, trapped in a cycle of guilt and desperation to please her family. The night she died, she'd had a panic attack after another fight with them, ending up in the ER. She went home alone, and that was it. Sarah mentioned the note Emily left for me. "She wanted you to have it, James, for closure. I can read it to you, or send it." I froze, my throat tight. Part of me wanted to know, but another part screamed to let it go. "I need time," I said, my voice barely audible. Sarah understood. She told me the note was an apology. Emily admitted she'd been wrong, that her family's influence and her affair with Mark were mistakes born of her pain. She'd written that she loved me, that I'd been the one good thing in her life, but she couldn't escape her demons. I sat there, staring at the stars, tears burning my eyes. I didn't know this woman anymore, but her loss cut deep. I drove back to Seattle the next day to tie up loose ends. I'd forgotten to change my mailing address, and some packages had gone to Emily's place. Sarah met me there, her eyes red from crying. The apartment was a mess, empty bottles, trash everywhere, a stark contrast to the home we'd shared. I grabbed my things, my hands shaking, and left. Sarah hugged me, saying, "You did what you could, James." She made her choices. I nodded, but guilt gnawed at me. Had I pushed too hard? Could I have saved her? Deep down, I knew the truth. Emily's family had broken her long before I came along. Back in Tacoma, I started therapy, needing to unravel the mess of emotions, grief, anger, betrayal. My parents and friends rallied around me, their support a lifeline. I found a new apartment near Point Defiance, a fresh start. Emily's death was a tragedy, but it was also a wake-up call. I'd spent years fighting for someone who couldn't fight for herself. Now, I had to fight for me. As I unpacked boxes, the Puget Sound glittering outside, I felt a flicker of peace. I'd carry the scars, but I was ready to heal.